Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce the Freedom Center's very controversial, very politically incorrect, very nice guest today.
Yes. So the deal with the book is, if you buy it, you're not allowed to read it. Essentially, as a mother, there's not much quiet time in your life. And so I used to come down in the morning at about 4 a.m. and write in the quiet, in the dark, for 2 hours at a time to write this thing. So I essentially talked to myself for a couple hours a day, and it was really therapeutic. And I kind of forgot that I was writing a book that someone else might one day read. So it's a massive overshare, incredibly inappropriate, and far too rude for anyone to ever read. I showed it to an American publisher, and she went, "This is too rude for America." And I went, "Yes, it is. It's too rude for my own mother, so please don't read it. Please just, use it as a doorstop," anything like that. But yes, I do start the book by saying I'm not a complete twat. And the reason for that is most people in the UK seem to think I am. But in reality, my name is Katie Hopkins. I otherwise known, I suppose, as the female Farage, the British Ann Coulter, or the biggest bitch in Britain. Now, on a point of detail, unlike Farage, I still have my own teeth, all of them, and some of them are even white. I know. And unlike Anne, I can talk about something other than a wall, Anne. And as for being the biggest bitch in Britain, I'm only about 130 pounds, I think, so I'm not really that big. I did put on 50 pounds once in 3 months to prove that fat people are lazy, and then lost it again, so half my own body weight. But we'll talk about that another time. Like I said, I'm known for being a little offensive, I guess. It's my hugest pleasure to be here with you today in this very lovely hotel. And it stands in rather direct contrast to my last 3 days living and reporting on Skid Row, downtown. Tucker Carlson, as many of you will have seen, did his best kind of disgusted face on Fox last night. Well, he did have some brilliant faces, Tucker, doesn't he? But he did his really best disgusted face last night when I ran my report. It was a good night, though. We had Mark on, we had Jordan Peterson, right? It was a good little crowd of us. A good lot of truth tellers, I think, from across the globe. But, I went to live and report from Skid Row for a bit because so often in life we don't want to really look at things that are ugly. My husband says that when he sees me in the morning. No, it's just, sorry. When I was last here in LA, I drove past Skid Row, like everyone does, and someone pointed and went, "Oh, well, that's Skid Row. That's where all the homeless people live. Row after row of people in tents, washed up, on the pavement, like plastic on the shoreline or something." And I think maybe we imagine if we don't look at something, maybe the problem will go away. Like my sister doesn't watch the news anymore because she just doesn't want to know about all the bad things that are going on. And I totally understand that. There's an element of self-protection in there, which I get. I took a map from a hotel nearby Skid Row, and we were only 2 blocks off Skid Row at that hotel. They'd stuck a sticker over Skid Row on their map, a sticker with some sort of instructions on, so as to make it disappear, to pretend it wasn't there, to hide it away from their guests, as if that would make it all okay. And I went there because it's not okay. It's a lot worse than I expected, and I've spent time in migrant camps in Calais. I've been to some fairly disgusting places. There's a quote I wanted to share with you. It's from a history book. "In the poorer parts of the city, hygiene was impossible to maintain in the overcrowded tenements and garrets. There was no sanitation, and open drains flowed along the centre of the winding streets. The cobbles were slippery with animal dung, rubbish, and the slops thrown out of the houses, muddy and buzzing with flies in summer, and awash with sewage in winter. The stench was overwhelming, and people walked around with handkerchiefs against their nostrils." That was written about London in the 1600s, in the slums. And I can tell you that walking around Skid Row, all of those words apply. This description fits perfectly downtown LA right now, today, in 2018, a place full of human filth, slops and rats. The rats are everywhere. The sidewalks are slippery underfoot. The rats teem about your ankles. It's exactly the same as it was in London in the 1600s, just before the outbreak of the bubonic plague. And I think it's a human health time bomb waiting to go off. These people are beyond help, and it is out of respect for them and for that the city needs to take complete control. Tears and sympathy won't cut it. Endless missions won't cut it. The military need to be moved in. These residents need to be physically assisted into supported housing of some description. And 4 million gallons of Clorox wouldn't go unmissed either. You know, we may look away now, but those tents aren't fixed in place, and nor are those rats. And my take on it is that as the numbers grow, so do the tents, and so do the rats, and so do the fleas on the rats. And very soon, one day, they will be outside the door of a Democrat politician. And maybe at that point, they will decide action actually is needed. But they are coming to us, and they are coming to our front door. However, washed and freshened up now, I'm back in action, feeling better about myself and ready to face another day. And it feels really good to be here in America, in the land of the free. And that's not a phrase I use very much to describe my own country, so desperate to please the Saudis and to submit to Islam. The recent exclusion of a law-abiding American citizen, Brittany Pettibone, a right-wing activist, and her boyfriend, actually, Martin Sellner, you may have heard their story, he's an Austrian, on the grounds of future hate speech as yet unsaid. I really broke a new low for Britain. They hadn't even said anything at all yet, and they have a clean criminal record. These are not criminal people. They were detained for 2 days at the border of the UK and then deported because the speech they wanted to give at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park might upset local communities. Local communities, don't you love that? That's a euphemism where I come from for Muslims. Like Asians, that's a euphemism the BBC use as well for our Muslim population. If 100 men are found guilty of raping our children in mass grooming gangs, the BBC uses the term Asian. So it throws a few Sikhs, half of India and a bit of Taiwan under the bus as well, so that the Pakistani men raping our children don't get hurty feelings. That's the country I live in. The Pakistani men sent down this week for abusing girls as young as 13 in Oxford, a city, they were called Oxford men by the BBC Press. These Oxford men. I have their names here. Asan Hassan, Kramer Abia, Khalistan Hussain, Hamran Khad, Rahim Ahmed, Alahita Yosahafa. Yeah, Oxford men those. Yeah, really. And if you can't be honest about that problem, you can't fix that problem either. It's like Skid Row. It's like our Pakistani grooming gangs. If you can't be honest about the problem, there's no way you're going to start fixing it. Lauren Southern was another right-wing activist. She's never done anything dreadfully wrong. She doesn't have a criminal record. She was held at Calais, our border with France, because she once used her platform in the UK to pose a question, controversially, I respect that, is Allah gay? Now, I'm blowed if I know. I guess it'd be a touch unfortunate in some ways because Muslims are not huge fans of homosexuals, so that would be a little awkward. And ISIS is rather prone to shoving gay men off tall buildings. So that'd be quite a story, wouldn't it, if ISIS shoved Allah off the top of a tall building? But I digress. She was deported essentially for breaking blasphemy laws in the UK that don't exist. De facto Sharia in the UK. So what's next? If I commit adultery, again, in the UK, will I be stoned by angry Muslim policemen? Given my sexual history, it's not looking good, to be honest. Again, back to rude, but Lauren Southern, a Canadian journalist, was hauled off a bus at the border with Calais and deported. A young journalist on her own, deported from the UK. The same ferry port where I've watched truckloads upon truckloads of illegal immigrants knowingly waved through without a single question being asked. A jihadi who put a bomb on our subway came to the UK via the port of Calais, the same port. He told officers he'd been training with ISIS for 3 months, learning how to kill non-believers. And we gave him a home, a foster family, and an income. And in return, he made a nail bomb and chose to plant it in a carriage full of school children on the subway in London, the Parsons Green bomber you'll have heard of. It strikes me, you know, that freedom is rather like sight or hearing or being doubly continent. Sorry when you're eating. It's kind of fundamental to life, but these are skills you don't really appreciate until you start to lose them. Like, I can't read without my glasses. And the time I waste looking for my glasses drives me and my family and my children to distraction. And freedom is very much the same. Now I see it being clawed away, I find myself looking for it in other countries and encouraging everyone to hold on to it for as long as they can, appreciate it. It's my consistent message to America. Do not let your country fall as we have fallen. Do not become the UK. Fight for your freedoms every day. And our fight is real. The assault on your Second Amendment rights is relentless. It's well-funded, immaculately coordinated and politically loaded, and there are dark forces, I think, at work behind the facade of these crying kids. I watched them, you know, as they marched for our lives, holding their banners, getting selfies, and to be fair, some of the fatter ones could do with a bit of exercise, so yes, walk on, children, walk on, not all bad. But I did wonder, listening to them, if they were ever going to shut up, talk about banging on. They said, enough is enough. Yes, that's enough. Shush now, children. Thank you. How many times? But as a mother of 3 children, aged 13, 12 and 9, I don't let my children make big decisions when they're upset. We wait till we've all calmed down and we feel a bit better. Good parents do not let little people make big decisions, especially when they're upset or crying. And good politicians do not look to children to make policy, particularly not on guns. Scratch beneath the thin veneer of these kids enjoying the attention and taking selfies for social media, there wasn't much substance to that march. Just like the women's marches in Washington, nothing changed. A few women went for a walk in a silly hat. That is it. But coordinated by the globalists, CNN, and the celebrity fools, the march should serve as a powerful reminder to all of us of the connected forces at work seeking to erode the freedoms your founding fathers made constitutionally yours. I'm a supporter of these rights of yours, and I'm proud to say I'm a card-carrying member of the NRA. And that might yes. And thank you. That one's for the NRA and Dana. And my son is very pleased, actually, with his hat and his duffel bag that I've brought home. And I've put my NRA car sticker in my car. Other mothers on the school run have stickers on their cars that say baby on board. I like to think that mine has bullets. Oh, yes. For many, you know, mothers don't really speak to me so much at the school gate. Does that come as a surprise? No. Especially not the larger ones. For many, the right to bear arms, you know, is not a freedom. It's a fact. It's a necessity of survival. And I'm talking about my friends, my white friends in South Africa, who need their guns to protect them through their day. I'm grateful to so many people in this room and the organisation for supporting me on my mission to cover the plight of white farmers in South Africa. An intention, actually, I announced at the Freedom Center weekend in November 2017. Well, 2 months later, in January 2018, I was there in country in South Africa with a cameraman, an armed security team, and a couple of military wagons capable of getting us closest to the story that I wanted to tell. You know, in urban areas in South Africa, the whites now live the same way that caged animals live in zoos. Whites in captivity almost, living behind fences and gates and behind bars. I did a school run with one mum. She calls into security to say that she's leaving her house with her children, drives the children through the automated gate, changes her route every day to the school, returns home a different way from the school run. She has to check her home cameras from her car before she gets to the gate to check that no one's lurking behind them to attack her as she goes through the gate. And that's a normal school run for that mum, regular mum. And on farms, only the richest can afford to defend their land and their crops. I walked a £22 million mega fenced farm. It just grows avocados and macadamias. But that's the sort of security they need. It was like a high security prison unit, and it had a helicopter reaction team in case trouble came, in case the blacks came to take the land, as they have been told it's their right to do. And that's the security you need to farm fruit in South Africa. And it's a very, very different world for the poor white farmers. Vulnerable and exposed, they talk about when, not if, they will be attacked. There have been more than 100 attacks so far in 2018. How many days are we into 2018? There's been 15 murders so far of white farmers in 2018. And a serving policeman who got in touch with me in South Africa and asked to meet said that within 3 years there'll be no more white farmers in South Africa. Whites will have been cleansed from the land, hunted to extinction, and unlike the white rhino, nobody cares. Mr. Johan Berger, a senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, he agrees. He says that to be a white farmer in South Africa is now statistically more dangerous and has a higher mortality rate than being a policeman on the front line. So there's 59 murders per 100,000 for farmers, white farmers, 55 murders per 100,000 if you're a policeman. These aren't great stats, but it's the reality of trying to farm in South Africa today as a white person. Here in California, the figure's about 4. On Skid Row, it's about 4,000, I imagine, but you know. Mariandra was married to a white farmer. She was asleep in her lounge with her daughter and husband when a black gang broke into their home. Her husband woke up and offered them anything they wanted, the car, the bakkie, the computer, the safe, anything they wanted to take. And instead, they shot him right there in front of their 6-year-old girl. They wanted to take Mariandra downstairs. So her little 6-year-old offered the men her piggy bank if they would let her mummy live. And she survived. Mariandra buried her husband and 5 days later gave birth to their first son. She's tiny, Mariandra, and frenetic when you meet her. She's so small. I asked her what will happen if she stops moving, stops organising, stops running, stops keeping everything together. You know how we do sometimes. She says she'll fall and she won't get back up. And Bernard came home from church with his father and his wife and children to light a braai, like a barbecue, on Sunday after church for the family. A black gang was waiting for him in his garage. 2 hours later, his father was dead. His wife was strung up with fencing wire in the garage, and his son had been shot at but lived. Bernard ran to his father dying on the stoop and pleaded with him to hold on. He said they had so much to do together on the farm, but his injuries were too cruel. And I learned that for these farmers and their families, death is not the end of it. Death might be a blessed relief for those who are tortured by the gangs, but for those left behind, sometimes I felt like they might suffocate in their sadness. It was almost as if they could barely keep their heads up to breathe. Bernard's 11-year-old doesn't want to live. He wants to join his granddad in heaven. He thinks the shot was meant for him, and if he had died, his granddad may have lived. And his smallest son, who watched the whole attack, his grandfather shot, his father beaten, his mother strung with wire, he can't sleep anymore. He's on antidepressants and sleeping pills, and he's tormented and has been asked to leave his school because he's now a violent child. He's 8 years old. There's many, many more stories like this, and I tell you them not to make you sad here at lunch, but out of respect for the lovely people I met and for their impossible lives, and as a reminder of why our freedoms and your rights really matter. Your right to speak, your right to bear arms, and for every crying child, from the kids from Florida and the Parkland schools screaming BS at the NRA, I think of Mariandra's little girl offering her piggy bank to the killers if they would let her mummy live. You know, some white farmers are fighting back. They're making sure they have their ownership of their weapons, and their wives, who I spent time with, are taking lessons in how to defend themselves and how to be that first line of defense if their husband's shot, so they might be the last thing that can protect their own children. I really understand that. Because once you lay down your arms, once you lose your right to speak freely, what do you have left to defend yourself with? And what will you defend your freedom of life with if you lay down your arms? You know, I remember in Sweden talking to a fireman. I went to walk the no-go zones of Sweden. I spoke to a fireman there in the toughest fire station in the country, planted in the heart of no-go Sweden, in the toughest suburb. He was building an even bigger fence around the fire station there to defend the fire engines, because the migrants would come and steal the cutting equipment they needed to save people, and they would funnel out the fuel from the tanks of the fire engines. So the wall, they needed to be bigger to try to keep these fire engines running. I asked that man whether we would need to build more walls like this in the future to keep people out. And he said no. He said we'll need to build walls to keep the people we love safe inside. And you know, I'm sure he's right. And I wanted to say that that's what I think we're all doing here. What we do when we stand together as conservatives, when we reach out to people and hold hands with them, to fellow patriots, to those defending our freedoms, even if we don't agree with everything we say, we're on the same team, we're on the same side. And I think that way we create a wall together to keep the madness out, to keep the darkness from our doors, and to keep the things we love most safe inside. My South African farming friends love their family, they love their God, and they love the land. My American friends, you love life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And together, as we build this wall, standing strong together, we look to keep those freedoms alive. We stand strong. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Pass the mic. I think Carl's coming up here for the first question.
Fascinating. I've got two questions. One question is about South Africa. As I understand it, the government of South Africa has passed legislation to expropriate without compensation all of the white farms, just as they did in Zimbabwe. So do you have a comment on that? Second question, you've got a whole chapter in your book about you and epilepsy. And I was wondering if you could give us some information as how did you conquer it, or how did you cope with it? What did you do? Because it doesn't look like you have epilepsy.
Okay. So, most importantly, yes, you're absolutely correct, sir. Cyril Ramaphosa, the new leader of the ANC, stood up at his State of the Nation address a couple of weeks back and said, our policy is land expropriation without compensation. You translate that, we're going to take your land. Now, you will imagine, as there are in every political kind of lineup, there's a harder wing to the ANC. Some call it the true face of the ANC. They're called the economic freedom fighters, and they are terrifying. They're the guys that you see chanting in the street, the guys that destroyed the H&M stores when there was the protest. They're the guys that sing a particular song at their political rallies, kill the Boer, kill the white farmer. They make throat-slitting gestures. They did last week in the Parliament building. A black policeman allied with the EFF after a farm incident the other day said, well, I would have cut his tongue out and gouged out his eyes too. So my point rather being that if you have the leader of the ANC saying, we're going to take your land and we'll give you nothing, once you translate that through the EFF chanting kill the Boer, kill the white man, and translate that down to the black gangs who action this stuff, it just means kill them. And they don't just kill them. This is the strange and curious thing. And we don't need to do the detail here. It's lunch, and I respect everybody. 2 to 3 hours of some of the things I couldn't handle. Sometimes I thought in South Africa my heart would just fall into a little pit. So, you know, a baby thrown in a bath of boiling water, a lady with, you know, they took irons from and they brand, and just stuff. 2-3 hours of that. So it isn't just about land, it's about vengeance and retaliation and making white people pay. And if you ask anyone the reason for anything, they'll say, apartheid. You know, and you can't move forward if you look back. So that's that. Epilepsy, yes. So I can do a trick later. It's got a trick I'm quite proud of. So I don't actually have a top of my head. I'm like a little boiled egg. So I'm missing about this much of my skull. In March 2018, March 2017, sorry, I went in for major brain surgery. They took off, they sawed off my skull, and they went into my head, and for 18 hours, a brilliant man went and found my epilepsy inside my head and cut it out. When you go into that kind of, oh no, I had a really good sleep. Like, it was the best sleep I've had for years. I had a great time. Like, I did nothing. The thing I would say is before that surgery, clearly they talk of a deficit, which is a very special doctor's term, I think. And they talk of the deficit could be your sight, where my epilepsy is just behind your sight. Left hand, I'm left-handed. That's God's way of laughing at you, isn't it? Deficit, left leg, that you could lose your speech, of course, and you could not come back at all. And actually, at the National Hospital for Neurology, one of the things that still gets me now is so many of the patients there are much less fortunate than me, and they drag a leg. So, you know, they will drag their left leg. And in many ways, going for my appointments before the surgery, it's sort of like, and I mean this so respectfully, it's like being amongst your worst nightmare because you see yourself. And so anyway, it turns out my surgery was super lucky, and I never had a single fit, not since the day I had my surgery. And no, but I still was a coward, so I really wasn't that brave. I had arrangements with my mum. She came to live in my house for 3 months while I went and sorted myself out. And we agreed that on the driveway, we wouldn't look at each other or talk so that we didn't get upset in front of the children. So we just passed in a really weird British way. Hello, mother. Hello, 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 hello. I might never see you again, but we won't talk about it because we're British. Okay, good, right. That happened. And my mum's just like me. She falls apart very easily. So, and then with my children, I was also a coward. And I didn't tell them what I was going to do on the surgery I was going to have. And I just made a folder instead, and it was called the folder of doom. And I didn't share the folder of doom with them. That would be really weird. But in it was all, you know how when people die, they're quite annoying because they don't get their affairs in order. So I did that. Everything was in order. And I made sure the children knew where their money was, or we paid off the school fees and things like that. So I felt like even if my children were cross with me that I had left them and didn't come back, they would know that I planned the best way I could for them and that I just didn't have the courage. So anyway, that's my little funny epilepsy story, which is a strange part of my life and not something I ever share. This is probably the first time I've ever talked about it, which is why the book is very strange for me, because it reveals secrets that I hid for many years. Anyway, thank you for that. Yes?
Hello, Katie. Thank you for having the courage to come to our corrupt, criminalized Confederate state of California. And you gave me a thought, which was bewildering. Skid Row. I thought about the Palestinian refugee camps. We are developing homelessness, I think, with the same attitude and same purpose. I don't know if you have given that any thought.
Yeah, I think one of the things, I think about that about Skid Row, I think about our country, I think about terror attacks in our country, is one of the things the state, I won't say the word likes, but one of the very strong tools available to any state is fear. And if you enable fear and your people live in fear, they're very easy to control. So if there is a terror attack and people are afraid, they're much more likely to look to the state for answers. And I see things like Skid Row, encouraging people to come, Dreamers, Sanctuary. I love the way they make it sound like a spa resort. Oh, we're going for a sanctuary, for a manicure and a pedicure, because we're a dreamer. You know, that's not the reality. It's about, for me, fear. And that's why I think they are frightened of people like me and you and good people, is because the one thing they can't control is truth, which is why they try and shut us down. Fear is much more easier when people are afraid. And it's why one of my big messages and how I try and live my life is to show that we won't be afraid, even if secretly we are. Yeah.
You're so witty and you're so right on the money. I'm just dying to hear what your take on this little thing that's going on in America is. We're being subjected to our enemies denouncing Donald Trump as Hitler. He's the same as Hitler. And I find it so amusing that these people who think that Donald Trump is Hitler want to take away all our guns. I'd love to hear what you'd have to say about the irony of this. If he's Hitler, why do you want to take away all the guns?
It's a curious thing. This attack on your Second Amendment is a really strange thing. But I think, you know, the best thing that happened to America is that you got Trump. I think it's fantastic. I love it. I love that. I believe that he would win because you could feel it. Like you could feel Brexit was going to win. You could feel it when you were here. I followed him on the election trail, and it was almost this, it was joyous because it was the people who don't have a voice always telling me that Trump was going to win. They were going to vote Trump. You could feel that he would win. And I think for so long, America was no longer leader of the free world. Under Obama, I don't think it could barely lead its own dog for a walk. But now, I honestly feel that you're back. I feel like America is the leader of the free world once again. And I love it. Every time the FTSE goes for another high, every time the Dow goes for another high, you get the highest employment rates that you've had on record, the highest or lowest black unemployment rates on record. Every time you smash another record, you make your taxes much more efficient. These are the way that Trump will carry on and prove itself. So, okay, fine, CNN, fine. You can stick a couple of ladies with exceptionally big breasts on your TV programs, and you can do that every day for the next 100 days. But as soon as Trump has another major win impacting things that matter, like employment, like people's own family finances, like your security, like your protection, like the safety of your children, those big-boobed women's don't matter one dime nor one jot. So, in answer, I think you're back as leaders, and I think many, many people, I know many, many people in the UK want Trump. They wish we had Trump. We have this very annoying London mayor, the mayor of Londonistan, Sadiq Khan. I can't stand him. The unfortunate thing is he speaks for London, and of course then he ends up speaking for the UK. There's this huge population in a very great place called the rest of the UK who are desperate for Trump to come. And I feel that momentum building. from Catalonia, you look at the Italian elections, which were won by the right, look at Germany, where the opposition party is now the AfD. Look at Viktor Orban, see what's going on in Hungary, look at the Czech Republic, and I feel it in the UK. My support base is sort of like, you know, if you're too near, it probably doesn't happen here, but if you're too near electricity pylons, there's a sort of buzzing. I feel that. It's like an electricity at the moment, and I'm excited for it. But certainly we look to Trump for leadership because we don't have any at home. Yeah. But
This follows on directly from what you just said. One of the best movies I saw this year was The Darkest Hour,
yeah.
which reminded us how for a period of time England basically stood alone in the world against Nazism and the forces of evil. And is that spirit lost? Are you pessimistic about that spirit? Because Brexit gave us all hope that maybe it's still there, but here it is a year and a half later, and now the voices are another referendum, maybe it'll never be implemented, you know, the pessimism there. But I think most of us feel if the UK goes down, it's a serious blow to world freedom and peace.
Yeah, I think you're right. And for a very long time I said that, you know, we've fallen. The UK has fallen. Do not fall as we have fallen. And I think that's true. We'll never see Brexit, not in the way that anybody like myself or the people that I stand with voted for. That will never happen. But what it does indicate is 17.4 million people think in a similar way that I do. Not that we have the same opinions, but we have the same strength of feeling for our country. That's nearly a third of the UK. Now you bring on another summer like we had last year of attack after attack after attack. We're just into the anniversary of Manchester. You are going to feel that those people rising up again, and I feel it at the moment. I felt it at Speaker's Corner the other day where I was slightly harassed by a lovely mob of gentlemen from, I would say, where would we say? Yes, Oxford men. Mostly called Ahmed or Hassan. I didn't really catch their names. They were too busy trying to kick me. But I feel that, and I know there's more rallies planned. There's one that was held in Birmingham last week. I couldn't attend. I'm due to speak at one in Manchester, and I feel it growing, and I know the state doesn't like it because of the level of hassle I get, and because I know the state can see what's coming, and they can't control us. So I do think we're rising up, and I think the fact that we have our Eastern European neighbours who are starting to rally gives us hope. Yeah.
Try to get in two last quick questions.
I'll talk really quickly.
I was just curious. Thank you so much, Katie, for your courage and your outspokenness and being willing to undergo all of this, both here and in Britain and all over. I was just curious as to, I was a little concerned with the millennials who are what Larry Sand calls marching madness, and the fact that they don't know that school shootings are down by 3/4, and police shootings are through the roof. But I was curious as to your comment on Justice John Paul Stevens' call for the repeal of the Second Amendment.
The marching. I should say to these kids, look, kids, let's not dress this up. You're going for a walk with a banner. Kind of get over yourself. You're not marching for your lives. And also, you didn't think it through very well, did you? Because there's already a March for Life, and that's against Planned Parenthood. And that kills 300,000 unborn children a year. So you got muddled up there, sunshine. And what I also say to these kids is you did not go marching over the 600 people who were killed in Chicago last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, because they didn't matter to you. So I say dry your tears, stop acting up for the cameras, and get back into class. And I'm very clear on that, and I think any more marches, we've had enough marches. Why don't they just do their marches all together? Women marching, pussy marches, children marching, just all march. March away from me, that way. Just anywhere that isn't this way. Yeah, and also, the other thing that really gets on my tiny tits, sorry, gentlemen, is they never put away their, it's gone a bit cursy now, so I held it together very well for a good hour, so you just have to roll with it now. Just get over it. they never throw away their bloody rubbish. So these banners, every damn time, they were there to protest Trump, banners everywhere, pussy marches, banners everywhere, mostly with vaginas and uterus, and no one needs that in the street. And then kids, I was walking up to the Mexican laundry, because I like to get my laundry done at local places to get a feel of a place, and there was fags against firearms under my feet. I mean, please, take your rubbish banners home with you. Anyway, good. I'm glad I feel better. I feel better.
You put a song in my heart.
Hooray.
What the heck is it with the UK's schizophrenic relationship with Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, but yet they vote against Israel along with the crazy countries at the UN?
I know.
So what is it between the UK and Israel?
It's so disappointing. I can't tell you. Sometimes, you know, when your country really lets you down, and because the UK voted against, or at least they didn't assist with the vote on Israel, and then you just want to go, oh, that's not me. You don't represent me. That's not my country. You know, that. I did a big rant on my radio show before I was fired. It was tragic but true. I wasn't fired for underperforming. I was fired for saying that we needed a solution to Muslims, which we do. But anywho, I had a big rant about Israel, and my God, did I go off on one. I did the full Hopkins goes ballistic. I love Bibi. He blows. If you throw a rocket at us, we're going to take down your house. And once we've taken down your house, we're going to come for your mum's house as well, and your brother's. And that's called justice. And I don't just build a wall if I'm Benjamin Netanyahu. No. I build a wall underground as well. Because that's what I do, because I'm Israel. And Israel have got a load of things right. And we should be more like Israel, right? So I really went for it. I got a government warning from the regulator for being too pro-Israel and not having enough of a balanced view. Now, they were right, of course, but it's my opinion. And I said, no. I read out some of the comments from the weird lefty Democrats in Balance on the show, because I know the rules and you have to cover your ass. And they were like, yes, but look what you said beforehand. And so as I read out their comments saying, well, no, it's the poor Palestinians we should worry about, and poor Hamas, it's very dreadful, and it's very hard if you're Palestinian, I prefaced their comments with, these liberal wankers said, and evidently that's not balance. So in defence, my next kind of flicking the V signs at that is that I'm taking a group with Rebel Media and we're going to Israel, we're going to tour, and I am going to go to the oldest tattoo parlour in Israel where they used to ink up the medieval kind of pilgrims, and I'm getting myself a tattoo in Israel of the Christian symbol. So have that.
Thank you, Katie.
I feel like it's time journalists stop gazing at their navel or the breasts of women who say they've slept with the president, and time they got out there and reported on a story. To see more of my work and more real reporting, join me at hopkinswell.com.